Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show.
Last night, on live television, the cameras caught something they weren't supposed to. A moment of silence so heavy, so uncharacteristic, that fans instantly knew something was wrong. When the news finally broke, it didn't come from a glossy press release or a dramatic on-air farewell. It came from an Instagram story. Just a few sentences. Thanking colleagues, thanking fans, teasing something new. And then she was gone. Molly Qerim, the woman who carried ESPN's First Take for nearly a decade, had walked out the door without a word to the man she sat next to all those years. Not once did she mention Stephen A. Smith. That silence wasn't an oversight. It was a statement, and it set the internet on fire. Because Molly Qerim's sudden resignation wasn't just another exit from a sports network. It was abrupt, it was unexplained, and it was wrapped in layers of mystery that even ESPN executives seemed unprepared to handle. One day, she was at the desk, moderating fiery debates like always. The next day, she was gone, without a tribute, without a farewell segment, without even a hint that viewers had just watched her final episode. And when fans pressed for answers, the explanations only made things messier. ESPN claimed the decision had been in the works for months, that contract talks simply didn't align, that it was all business as usual. But the timing told a very different story, because according to insiders, Molly wasn't supposed to leave until the end of the year. Something happened that sped up the timeline, something powerful enough to force a sudden, clean break. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Molly's quiet Instagram goodbye wasn't the only signal she left behind. She deliberately left Stephen A.'s name out of her message. 10 years of sitting across from him. 10 years of morning debates, arguments, and chemistry that turned First Take into ESPN's crown jewel. Yet in her farewell, she erased him completely. And for viewers who know how carefully curated public statements are in television, that omission was louder than any insult. On air, Stephen A. tried to hold it together. He told the audience he was blindsided, that he didn't like it, that he wasn't happy about it. But his words sounded carefully chosen, almost filtered. He praised Molly's contributions. He emphasized how much she meant to the show. Yet there was a restraint in his tone that left people wondering, what wasn't he saying? Because for a man who built his brand on blunt honesty, on never holding back, his goodbye to Molly felt more like damage control than raw emotion. And fans weren't the only ones who noticed. Analysts like Emmanuel Aiko openly accused Stephen A. of fueling speculation, of tossing out half-truths to stir buzz while claiming he was respecting privacy. They said his language wasn't the language of a friend. It was the language of a producer, of someone already thinking about optics, headlines, and ratings. That criticism cut deep, because here's the reality. Stephen A. isn't just a co-host. He's the executive producer of First Take. The man who holds real power not just on camera, but behind the scenes. Which raises a brutal question. If Molly was truly his friend, why didn't he fight harder to keep her? Because make no mistake, Stephen A. has fought for others. He's bragged about it on air. How he went to bat for Shannon Sharp, for Kinder Perkins, for countless colleagues who landed bigger contracts because he pushed for them. His influence has turned part-time roles into six-figure jobs. But when Molly Qerim, the woman who sat next to him for nearly a decade, fought for fair pay and recognition, something changed. Former ESPN analyst Marcellus Wiley revealed the staggering gap. Molly allegedly wanted around $500,000 a year. Stephen A. makes nearly $20 million, a 40-to-1 ratio. And yet, there's no sign he used his influence to close that gap. Now imagine being Molly. For years, you show up, you play moderator, you balance egos, you anchor the most watched show on the network, and you earn a fraction of what your co-star earns. Then when the time comes to renegotiate, the man with all the power, the man you've backed up live on air through countless heated exchanges, suddenly goes silent. It's not just a professional slight. It's personal. And that silence might have been the final straw. Because there were signs, little cracks that fans caught if they looked close enough. That moment in 2024, when Molly snapped at Stephen A. during a debate about small market teams, accusing him of chasing headlines instead of respecting the sport. The tension in her voice didn't sound staged. Or the viral clip where she muttered under her breath after he joked about her appearance, her frustration barely hidden. Or the awkward moment in 2025 when she quietly told him to shut his laptop after cameras caught a glimpse of private messages, and he resisted before reluctantly complying. These weren't playful TV banners. They were glimpses of a partnership under strain. And then came her final day, Monday, September 15th. She walked in the studio, did the show like she had for nearly a decade, and walked out. No warning, no farewell, just silence. By the next morning, her resignation was official. ESPN executives scrambled. issuing unusually detailed statements, floating names of potential replacements, and insisting negotiations had simply not aligned. But the more they explained, the less convincing it sounded. Why scramble for replacements if the exit was planned months in advance? Why act like this was sudden if everyone supposedly saw it coming? The contradictions only fueled speculation. And behind it all, fans kept circling back to the same haunting detail. Molly didn't mention Stephen A. Not once. And that gap in his words left the audience unsettled. Because this wasn't just about Molly leaving. It was about the empire of First Take cracking in real time, and the man at the center of it looking shaken. Midway through the fallout, ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, jumped in with a statement that felt strangely desperate. He praised Molly's professionalism, her poise, her years of service. He insisted the network wanted her to stay, even teased other roles for her outside of First Take. That level of detail was unusual. ESPN almost never comments this much on departures. Normally, it's a quick thank you and goodbye. But here, they were scrambling, trying to control the narrative. And the more they spoke, the more obvious it became. This wasn't clean, this wasn't simple, and this wasn't what they had planned. Fans started connecting the dots. The timing, the silence, the scramble, the look on Stephen A's face. This wasn't a farewell, it was an implosion. And it left viewers asking, was Molly pushed out, or did she push herself out as an act of defiance? And that's where the most explosive speculation began. Because if Stephen really had the power to fight for her and didn't, then her exit wasn't just about contracts. It was about loyalty, about a partnership that looked unbreakable on camera, but was quietly fracturing for years. And Molly's decision to leave without warning, without a tribute, without even naming Stephen A, was the final nail in that relationship. For years, fans believed Molly and Stephen A were the perfect balance, the fiery debater and the calm moderator, the spark and the anchor. But the truth might be that their chemistry was more fragile than anyone realized. Those tense on-air moments weren't just banter. They were glimpses of a co-host who felt undervalued, overlooked, and undersupported. And when the chance came to walk away, she didn't just leave quietly. She left in a way that told the whole world she wasn't willing to play the game anymore. But if Molly's silence was the loudest message of all, then Stephen A's silence in the contract fight might be what doomed her place at ESPN. And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because the darker turn isn't just about what Molly lost. It's about what Stephen A gained. With Molly gone, he's not just the star of First Take. He's the sole power at the desk. No moderator with tenure. No co-host who can challenge him with the credibility of a decade-long presence. The show, for now, belongs entirely to him. And that shift raises a question few are willing to say out loud. Did Stephen A benefit from Molly's exit more than anyone else? Think about it. ESPN scrambled to announce a 30 to 45-day tryout process for her replacement, cycling through names like Shea Cornett, Christine Williamson, and Monica McNutt. None of them have Molly's history. None of them carry her weight inside the network. And none of them can match her decade-long connection with viewers. Whoever fills that chair will be a newcomer in Stephen A's world. A co-host who knows they're replaceable. A co-host who knows where the real power sits. That's leverage Stephen A never had with Molly. And yet, the story isn't that simple. Because while Stephen A might have the power, his reaction suggested something else. Something raw, unfiltered, and almost vulnerable. He didn't just look upset. He looked rattled. Fans caught it instantly. For a man who thrives on control, who thrives on dominating every debate, the sight of him searching for words felt foreign. And that's why so many people believe this wasn't part of his plan. That maybe, for the first time, he was caught in a storm he couldn't spin. But then came the backlash. On podcasts and social media, critics tore into his reaction. Emmanuel Aco called him out for saying Molly abruptly resigned, hinting at secrets without ever sharing them. He accused him of speaking in half-truths, of adding mystery to fuel speculation while pretending to protect Molly's privacy. That criticism struck at the heart of the debate. Was Stephen A genuinely blindsided and hurt, or was he using the moment to create buzz for himself and the show? Either way, the optics weren't good. And behind those optics was the brutal reality of power. Stephen A has built his career on calling others out, on demanding accountability, on refusing to let anyone escape scrutiny. But now, with Molly gone, the spotlight has shifted. For the first time in years, the questions aren't about athletes or coaches. They're about him. Did he fail to support a co-host who deserved more? Did his influence tip the balance in negotiations? Or was this simply a case of ego and empire clashing until one side decided to walk away? The salary gap revealed by Marcellus Wiley only fueled the fire. $500,000 versus $20 million. A gap so wide it's almost unthinkable. And while some defended it by pointing to ratings, contracts, and Stephen A's unmatched brand, others saw it as proof of an imbalance that Molly could no longer tolerate. She wasn't just underpaid, she was undersupported. And when she realized nothing was going to change, she made the boldest move she could. She left on her own terms. That decision, abrupt as it was, has already reshaped the future of ESPN's crown jewel. Without Molly, First Take isn't the same show. It's Stephen A's show, plain and simple. And that's exactly what makes her exit so haunting. Because when you strip away the statements, the spin, and the speculation, one fact remains. Molly Qerim walked away from the biggest stage in sports media without looking back. And here's where the story gets even more complicated. Because as soon as Molly's silence became public, people started digging. Digging through old clips, digging through awkward exchanges, digging through moments that, at the time, felt small but now, in hindsight, look like warning signs. That muttered frustration after one of Stephen A's jokes. That sharp clapback about small market teams. That tense exchange over his laptop. Each one a breadcrumb. Each one suggesting that the cracks in their partnership had been forming long before September 15th. And when fans connected those dots, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just a sudden resignation. This was the breaking point of a relationship that had been under strain for years. Molly didn't just leave ESPN. She escaped a dynamic where she was never going to win. But even as the internet picked sides, one question lingered, heavier than all the others. If Stephen really had the power to change things for Molly, why didn't he? And the answer to that question might reveal more about him and about ESPN than either of them ever intended. Because in the end, Molly Qerim's exit wasn't just about one show. It was about an industry forced to confront its own reflection. She wasn't just a moderator. She was a decade-long anchor, a steadying presence, a voice that helped define the rhythm of ESPN's crown jewel. And when she walked away, the silence that followed was louder than any debate. To some, her departure is a story of empowerment, a woman reclaiming her worth in an industry that often undervalues it. To others, it's a cautionary tale about loyalty, about what happens when networks prioritize one empire over the foundation that holds it together. But no matter how you frame it, the ripple effect is undeniable. Without Molly, First Take is not the same. It's Stephen A's show, and only Stephen A's. And that shift exposes a deeper truth. Power is never permanent. Today, Stephen A holds the desk, the spotlight, the influence. But with Molly gone, every move he makes is magnified. Every stumble, every controversy, every reaction is under a microscope. Because when the balance is broken, the cracks show faster. For Molly, the story is unfinished. Maybe she resurfaces at a rival network. Maybe she launches her own platform. Maybe she disappears for a while, only to return louder, stronger, and freer than before. Whatever her path, one thing is clear. She didn't just resign. She left a mark that ESPN will feel long after the headlines fade. And that's the haunting legacy of this moment. Because when the cameras cut, when the debates end, and when the contracts expire, only one question remains. Did ESPN lose a moderator? Or did they lose the soul of First Take?